What's up, y'all? It's your boy Aniki coming at you with another My Hero Academia Church of MHA episode, season 3, episode 30, My Hero Academia chapter 371 live reaction. Welcome, one and all. Come. I'm excited to have another discussion centering on the manga chapter. And as those of you who've been watching the anime know, we've been talking about the anime episodes every week too. Anytime there's an anime season, the church talks about the manga, and then we randomly segue into anime and bounce back and forth. So while this isn't necessarily for anime onlys, you are technically welcome. And MK the baby drops the first comment in the chat. Cameron Bailey, what's up? So while we wait for people to get in, hey, Tiger Blasted 200, hey, I can't believe you've done this, and Lamar Arrington. Okay, my peeps piling in real quick. Love to see this. So I'm gonna just sit here and talk about how we got some outfits for the baby girl. That's right. For those of you who've been keeping up, and those of you who have not been keeping up or aren't on Twitter, I have a baby girl expected, so I got her this nice I Love Daddy shirt with a nice mommy's angel shirt, and then a shirt about how she loves her mommy and her daddy, because we cannot wait for her to get here. She's expected to be here in March of 2023, so that'll be fun. Looking forward to that next stage. Maybe you guys will get to meet her on stream at some point. We'll see. But yeah, very excited for that. Very excited to have my daughter here sooner, but healthy, still not too soon. So just gonna talk about last chapter a bit while more people come in. And I think the part of the disconnect that I've seen in some of the discourse is that there's not a lot of discussions on what can be categorized as something as simple as casual racism. Because when I see people say that things haven't been built up, I wonder if there are certain things they just haven't experienced in life, or that like come off as like backhanded compliments. I think a lot of my fellow African Americans can relate to having somebody in one-off comments kind of be like, oh, you're so well-spoken. And what they really mean is, I didn't know a Black person could talk without using lots of slang. That's so impressive. And it's like, and you know it's meant to be the latter and not just a simple compliment, because of the fact that you don't, like, especially if you have like, you know, white friends, they never say that to the white kids. They only say that to, you know, like you or like other Black people. So when you have people who kind of say those kinds of off, it's like supposed to be a compliment, but you realize what the subtext is, and you realize that it's still kind of a discriminatory mindset, or being a tall Black person and kind of having somebody immediately be like, oh, I bet you're going to try to be an NBA star. And it's like, well, actually, I've wanted to be a lawyer since I was 4. But thanks. So, hey, Brandon De La Cruz and Saucy. And so if you aren't the kind of person who's had to deal with getting these random passive aggressive statements leveled at you, you're not gonna look at, you know, Shoto's comments calling the police chief a mutt, or Mina calling, or Mina's horns getting played with, similar to how people would be like, oh my goodness, I love your hair, can I play with it? And just start touching your hair, which if you go online, you'll see a lot of Black women mention when they like grow out their froze or anything like that. Even I've had that experience of people wanting to like play with my hair. So just small, what people call microaggressions, are kind of littered throughout the series. So if you just kind of go back to the series, and I want you to think about how it could be a little dehumanizing to have some of these things emphasized, or the casual comments like Bakugo calling Mina raccoon eyes. Just stuff like that is littered throughout the season. If you notice that Deku never refers to anybody like that, and it's kind of something that exists to separate him from other people in hero society as someone who genuinely appreciates people from all walks of life. And that's kind of one of the main things that's supposed to make him, you know, a bit better, a bit more worthy of being a hero. So I kind of wanted to just talk about that a bit as we're, you know, everybody's coming in early, and have this kind of at the front of the chapter before we dive into it, especially because I'm sure that whether we could location shift, but if we're not location shifting, I just kind of wanted to preface this chapter with that discussion. So yeah, see, we're at like 23 people. Why not? I'm excited for the chapter, so I kind of want to get in here. Yes, Aizawa typically refer to mutant types as heteromorphs, and what's more is that Spinner even goes on to say that they prefer not to be referred to as heteromorphs. It's kind of seen as a derogatory sense because it separates them from humans. So they want to be counted as humans. They want to just be seen as regular humans who happen to have these animalistic features. And so you kind of have to internalize and understand those aspects of society in the way that people kind of, even if they don't mean to, put people off that are different than them, and make it kind of clear that you're aware of and emphasizing that distinction between the two of you. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and hop into this chapter now. Chapter 371 of My Hero Academia. The safety of those in the hospital. This chapter is titled Together with Shoji. Tell me you have a plan, because if not, I won't let this stand. Ask me if have plan. Oh, what his problem? Boy, hurt me. Yeah, Spinner is in a rough spot of it, but this does confirm something that I had been curious about, because I kind of thought Makia had been no, JT, that is not what's happening. I'm not naming the daughter after my cool and suave older brother. But I kind of wondered if Makia had been able to handle the burden of extra quirks because he was a heteromorph or a mutant type. And to a certain degree, I think that that's still kind of being highlighted, that maybe it'll cost him intelligence, but he'll be able to take the quirk on. But that also kind of shows that even everybody still has, their own repercussions, because obviously One for All is especially unique in the case that it integrates with the quirk in the person's body. So that would explain why, when it attaches, it's meant to kind of latch on, combine with, and then kind of edit, but at the same time still causes too much strain. Whereas with mutants, they're just kind of getting something extra tucked into them, but we'll kind of see. I don't know if this is supposed to, obviously this is a little too early to see if it's going to shorten its lifespan, just like we would have never seen if Airwalk, have its negative consequences on Lady Nagant. So we'll see. So we got coded. That sounds like Shoji. Check out that kid, all those nasty scars on him. Yeah, but it's just like you told us, Rep, how we got to obey and steal back Kurogiri, even if it means sacrifices. Tell us what to do. We know you're true and just. I don't care. He doesn't care. Indeed, he's saying history is written in blood, meaning such things are unavoidable. That stupid kid and Spinner too. They're making this harder than it needs to be. Press onward. Spinner, you're about to set us back 30 years. Man, this shot of Shoji's face with the lines on it and everything else, kind of pointing out that he's like, hey, this terrorist act, this isn't going to help mutant causes in the long term. It's going to be used by our enemies as political agenda pushing. And this is kind of what has been called respectability politics, where people, and we have this interesting dynamic now in the modern era, I'll say, where people will say that respectability politics are 100% BS. And then you have the flip side, which is that if you don't do things that people can respect, then they'll use that to further justify their discrimination. I think both sides are objectively have a point to them in this case, because on one hand, you shouldn't have to perform and be better than the people who are worse than you just to, get equal treatment to people who are worse than you. But on the other hand, objectively causing harm to people who are technically not part of the problem, can also lead to them being like, well, if you're my enemy, then I'm just going to stay your enemy because you caused me harm now too. So there's a tricky balance to this where you have to make it clear that you're not interested in that. But this is like by turning it into a full-blown warfare, you get people who are going to like more or less perpetuate the cycle of resentment. So there's definitely a give and take to be done here in understanding when it's time to be cordial and when it's time to be, ready to fight. This is a scenario in which I would argue if it weren't for the fact that so many mutants had gotten discriminated against when it came to shelters and finding safety throughout this tragedy, because this is something that I was arguing with somebody about on Reddit even, a lot of mutants spent the last month being discriminated against. And this is something that I think people aren't fully factoring into the context of this situation. Because if you remember, Ippon Jose, she straight up said, I was denied refuge. They said no heteromorphs allowed. So let's say you were a mutant who was like, man, I've had a lot of bad stuff happen to me, but you know what? I'm not really down with Shigaraki and the gang and all this other stuff. And then all of a sudden, all this stuff happens with Makia, the League of Villains, the Paranormal Liberation Front, and society falls apart. And you hit up like 6 shelters looking for refuge, or looking for safety. And they're like, nah, no mutants. Now you're sitting here like, well, these dudes don't want people to mistreat me or my fellow mutants. These people are actively doing so, even though we're hurt by the same tragedies. So I'm gonna roll with these people then. Screw it. I don't need to go. I don't want to go back to the status quo either. The status quo sucked for me. It's like the people who fought in the Civil War that were Black and fighting for the Union weren't fighting for the Union because the Union didn't have racists in it. They were fighting for the Union because if the Union won, there was a chance they wouldn't have to be slaves anymore. So they just chose the side that would benefit them more in the long term. It was purposely set up. So to answer that question, JT, the way the story is structured is that it specifically mentions having societal problems under the surface bubbling up. So the first 2 acts of the story, so the UA Beginning Saga and the Rising of the Villain Saga, is specifically designed to show you the undercurrents, and you're supposed to look at the subtleties between what's going on and then have everything pop out at the end. People have said My Hero Academia is a slow burn, but it seems like they didn't realize that a slow burn is usually in reference to a type of fuse. And once you get to the end of that fuse, you get a nice big explosion. And this is that explosion. I don't know if any of you guys have ever played with an M80 or anything like that, but you'd have like the green stem firecrackers, and they would take like an extra like 30 seconds to burn. So you could light them, hold them in your hand, wave them around a little bit, throw them, catch them, and then toss them. And then, I'm not saying do that, by the way. Don't do that. That's dangerous. And if you get injured, that's on you, because I just straight up said don't do that. But point is that there's different types of fuses, and when you have a slow burn, when you design the wick to not go down right away, you have to pay more attention to it and make sure that you don't have it in your hands when it's happening. That's why some people even will play hot potato with these kinds of things. And I'm not saying it was smart. I'm saying it's just what some people have done. So going forward, let's see. Let me get back in instead of discussing the commentary, because I know some of you guys want me to get through the chapter first. Shut up, seriously. And if that body bulk doesn't get the job done, consider using this gift as well. He gave him 2 quirks. Can't care anymore. Scale mail will grant you your power defense. Grant your power defense in a form befitting a leader. Not about any of it. Not anymore. League of Legends. Yeah, I've played that one. Only on solo mode, though. Oh, okay. So this kind of confirms. I thought I saw somebody talking about League of Legends being tied into this chapter, and I didn't know what they were talking about exactly. Okay, time out. There's a lot that just happened here. So first off, let me address the League of Legends thing. Solo queue, because fun fact, I used to play a lot of League. Like I'm ashamed of how much money I spent on League of Legends. You don't want to know. Let's just say I own probably over 150 skins. Yeah, I think I own over 150 skins. Maybe not that bad. Nah, it's probably that bad. But I've spent like a year League clean. I was a mid lane main. Anyway, in fact, I actually have some old unlisted videos on this channel that involve me getting like a pentakill on Lucian, A pentakill on Diana. I think I actually uploaded like a whole 59-minute game where we only won because somebody stole Baron in like the last like 6 minutes of the game. Played a lot of League. That's the point. But when he says solo mode, at first I was like, but League is a permanently team-oriented game. He was talking about solo queue, so you can queue up and play League and just get assigned 4 randoms. But before like season 4, 5, 6, or whatever, it was 2 options. You had queue up all alone, get in there, or bring a buddy. So specifically in this case, it seems that the suggestion would be that more than likely Shigaraki was an ADC main and Spinner was his support, or the iconic duo that I loved having, playing mid lane and having a jungler. So now the other thing that made me excited was Spinner yelling, just keep moving, and then cutting off Shoji's Duplo arm. Now, and this is important, Shoji, okay, so back in October of 2020, I tweeted out, don't be surprised if it's Shoji versus Spinner at the end of the series. And you have to see Spinner chop off my boy Shoji's Duplo arms. So seeing this page where that prediction has come to full fruition, I love it. I love it. Oh. No. League is not the game with Leroy Jenkins. The Riot fighting game has me a little worried because of what it was based off of, but we'll see. But yeah, because like the Riot fighting game had like full yeah, especially because it's the same month. That's the part that really kills me. But the fact that we have, I mean, I'm just gonna get back into the chapter. I'm too excited now. I'm too excited. Ooh. All right, let's see. A couple hands flying through the air, which, you know, Horikoshi has got to draw them hands. He's got to. Shoji, brethren, observe our chosen rep. He shows us how the oppressed and downtrodden must find the courage to strike back. We are martyrs for the revolution. Blood spilled today will lead to rights for future heteromorphs. And then we see Koji Koda. That's ridiculous. Of all people, Shoji is. Okay, and so we get the flashback. And we find out that Shoji revealed his face to the Class 1A. It's kind of cool. Because what this means is that with the so this kind of is another thing that like create those ties that bind. The revealing of One for All, and whether this was after, during, like, you know, post-war, post-Deku being far from home, before that, whatever the case may be, this kind of highlights for us that at one point, Shoji felt comfortable enough to sit down and talk to Class 1A and say, hey, this is what happened to me. So I don't know if this, like I said, I don't know if this is, but if it was after, it means that Shoji was like, look, Deku, you feel like you need to do this because of the burden you carry. So I'm going to sit down and explain to you that everybody, or not everybody, but this is the level at which the discrimination that I experienced growing up was like. So the quirkless discrimination you felt might have been, like, not necessarily say the quirkless discrimination that Deku experienced wasn't that bad, but the fact that he went through what we'll call more than bullying, because man, this is wild. And the bug guy isn't exactly the hype man for Spinner. It's more like Spinner has been manipulated because he's the face, and the bug guy, or Disgust Us as he's been getting called, has is effectively utilizing it because unlike Spinner, he's a lot more experienced in politics. So he's tapping into that to help move the crowd and get what he's actually after and utilizing what he can. It does kind of look like it could have been the Christmas party. I'll later on during the stream, I'll go back and look at the chapters and see the outfits so that I can make sure Deku's wearing the same shirt. Yeah, I'm trying to, it is torture. Like it's straight up torture. It's battery, it's assault, it's abuse. Ain't nothing good, no positive ways to describe that. My parents didn't have arms like mine. We lived in an awful time. They all came out in force for a blood cleansing when I touched someone. Koda, Tokoyami, and the others who grew up in the cities might have read in textbooks about areas of the country where children are still made to bear scars like mine. And you notice that we get this emphasis on Mina and Sue here, two mutants. Sue being someone who's a mutant, but definitely a lot less mutant, vibes than Mina. But Mina being an example, like, the way Nijiri starts playing with her horns and how people often like to say, oh, I feel like Mina's black. Like, I know that Mina is a Japanese girl, don't worry. But as a character, and she kind of reminds you of, like some of the black girls. And so people kind of think of like that horn playing as a comparison to like the Afro touching that I had mentioned earlier. So screw that. So screw that. The world's be better off without those creep. Maybe so, but the disparity remains. Oh, geez, I'm pretty sure I called him octopus once. Okay, and see, boom, immediately. So what's crazy is that think about what I was saying at the beginning of the stream, how the dialogue in this stuff is reminiscent of the passive-aggressive comments that people make and how the earlier comments made in the series towards characters like Shoji by Pony, who I didn't even mention this stream, but last stream, when she called him an octopus and said she trots pie his tank and she's not interested in him. When I talked about the raccoon eyes comment, immediately Mineta. So understand this. If you can read this section of the story, and I don't think anybody who's listening to the stream fits this category because you would have just listened to me explain all this anyway, even if you had. But the people who read this section of the story and don't understand what was set up previously have a worse comprehension of discrimination than Mineta Minoru. And I don't know about you, but I never want to be worse than Mineta at anything. That's just me. Sorry, man, I wasn't trying to say you were gross or anything. It's only natural that my arms make people think of an octopus. I went for Tentacle as my hero name since taco is Japanese for octopus. If you've never had takoyaki, there you go, taco, octopus balls. And it's not like I'm unaware of the widespread heroes who look like villains ranking and stuff like that. Yo, tell me why. Tell me why. I was on Reddit explaining to this dude that Gank Orca being ranked third on the heroes who look like villains list was a direct byproduct of heteromorph discrimination. And this dude was like, well, since Endeavor, and I was like, no, Endeavor is purposely intimidating. But these people sat there, looked at Gank Orca, who even if his name is Gang, this is about what he looks like, who just looks like a killer whale nigga in a suit, and decided that's a villain. That's a villainous looking dude. Which I do think is ironic because you would then have All For One, who has, his wrinkly face with no discernible details besides his functioning ass mouth. And it's just basically a dude that you could put any face on in a suit and he's the main villain. Sure, we finally got a face reveal, but I want you to think about, like, yeah, you see these people who are discriminatory, but this guy who could be anyone in a suit, he's the real main villain. Tell me that's not brilliant. Now, anyway, like, it's not like I'm aware of the heroes who look like villains rankings and stuff like that. I wouldn't want people to tiptoe around the issue for my sake. But my scars in heteromorph form are bound to make people wonder. So I wear them as since I wouldn't want anyone thinking I'm out for revenge. That takes strength, Tokoyami. I've been through plenty of horrible times that I'll never forget, but rather than dwell on the bad memories, and then we get a flashback to him saving a girl who was almost drowned in a river, I'd rather cling to the single good one related to this body of mine. Yo, and this just made him getting attacked even crazier. because first off, it further justifies the closeness of Tokoyami. Because I don't know if you guys have read School Briefs, but I know we've talked about School Briefs on here a couple times, and I haven't read all the volumes, even though I have a bunch. But in the very first volume of School Briefs, Tokoyami and Ida and Kaminari and I think Mineta all get tickets from Native due to saving him from staying. And they end up going to this festival because, you know, the other guys were all busy or something like that. I can't remember exactly why it ended up being eaten with this particular hodgepodge of characters. And so they end up going to this fair, and at the fair, they meet this 3-year-old girl who sees Tokoyami, sees this bird head, freaks out, runs away. They end up going into a haunted house or one of those like fun houses or whatever, and this girl's like 3 years old and her quirk activated, so she ended up scared at one point, and the house ended up trapped in the shadows. And that's how like Tokoyami ends up going and helping her, coaching her through the situation, and effectively saving her from being afraid of her own quirk. She then apologizes for being scared of his bird head and basically is like, this is going to be my new favorite hero when he grows up. So for both of them to have saved a girl and then have experienced discrimination, one from the girl and one because of saving the girl, just makes their bond all the better. That's all I'm going to say with that one. Related to this body of mine. Also experienced this warmth during the cavalry battle in Volume 4. Oh, only one good memory. Say it ain't so. We'll make it a million together, buddy. This familiar warmth. You've got us. There'll be lots of good memories down the road. Not them all climbing under Shoji's arms for a big old bear hug or octopus hug. Exactly. But I know it'll take more than one generation to tear down a wall that stood for over a century. So just as those who came before have done, I'll keep paying it forward. And this is back to what Nezu was talking about, how each step of progress, it seems to take that small step, that single step. It takes a long time, but it's a big one, and you have to make it. So, man. Okay, and I'm looking back at the chat. I feel bad because I got somebody posted a clip, and I realized that sometimes I read the chat and I don't say that I'm reading the chat. I just randomly look at the screen, and I'm sure people who have been here a long time know that that's what I'm doing. But yeah, Shoji having to explain to Japanese people what a word means Japan in Japanese. I mean, it's the same as someone explaining an English pun to a person. Well, Japanese is hard. English is hard. To misspell things all the time. Let's see. Orca runs a mafia. Man, being a heteromorph hero must be something. Imagine Karen calls in heroes to report a villain sighting, and it's just another mutant hero. Exactly, Tobufu. I don't know if you guys have read the Green Lanterns comic. I think I have them on the shelf over here. But one of my favorite Green Lanterns is one that came out during the New 52 era. Despite whatever issues people have with it, they produced Simon Bass. He was an Islamic Green Lantern who effectively got arrested for like joyriding or whatever, but ended up overcoming the situation. But he was a Green Lantern that routinely carried a Glock. But during the big crossover event between the Justice League and the Justice League of America, where he had been contracted, we got an insight into his mind. And one of his biggest fears was the consistent discrimination he faced as an Islamic man, where one of the issues actually involved him coming home to his house being graffitied, him being called a terrorist. And as they were diving through his fears, one of his nightmare scenarios was him hitting a breaking point with the discrimination that he faced and actually just starting to level a city because of it. That idea that constantly being called something and eventually becoming it was something that he had in the back of his mind. But yeah, so just had to touch on that too. Now, going back, so just as I'll be the coolest hero of the world, I'll keep paying it forward. I'll be the coolest hero the world's ever seen to give good memories to generations to come. Basically being like, I want the kids like me to feel like they can be something and be somebody. You love to see it, trying to be that role model and that example, trying to give young people hope, making sure people who feel like they don't have a place in this world actually do have one, and recognizing that he's in a position to do that from a young age. And hopefully for those kids in the future not having to join and be a hero to get that same proper treatment. Because that's one of the things that if you look at even modern society in the US, I won't talk about Japan in this one because I don't remember exactly Japan's military recruitment protocol, but also it's a lot more homogenous in the US. And at the end of the day, I live in the US, so it's a lot easier for me to explain stuff through a US lens. But there are many Black people who specifically joined the military partially because of the fact that they are just straight up not necessarily wealthy. Most of us don't come from wealth. Like the majority of Black people do not come from wealth. At least in America. I'm not going to speak for the rest of the world, but I think a lot of issues from World War II being fought in multiple occasions in Africa has messed up quite a few countries, which I think a lot of people don't remember that. Like one of the dudes who decided to kill Hitler made that decision after having a dog fight above the sands of Egypt. Just saying. But like this idea that by setting an example and showing excellence, and if you've ever been online, you've seen people talk about Black excellence specifically, to set an example to show children that there is a way out beyond the harmful stereotypes or the things that have been levied against you or your people. Shoji understanding that at the age of 16, not because he wants to, but because he has to, is just bittersweet. That's what I'll call that. So I was persecuted too, and no, the people who hurt us weren't justified, but there's got to be a better way. Oh, going back to what I was talking about earlier, Ipan Jose. Several shelters turned me away. No heteromorphs allowed, they said. Don't care, destroy all. Think about how to make use of that rage. I know you can, because we've all got scars we carry. Were it that easy to bury the hatchet, it wouldn't have come to this. Do you offer a feasible solution? No. Only the pathetic cry of your ego. Our hearts are long since hardened by society, far too hard to be moved by such a childish naivety. Don't you dare mock Shoji. Hey, yo. What? What the? Hold on. So Koda's head starts sprouting something. And then so then Shoji like wraps his arms around Spinner's plates. And it starts to actually look like an octopus arm, but he's got eyeballs and stuff like that coming out of it and all kinds of stuff. To which Spinner says, gross. And Shoji replies, yeah, this is who I am. All right, y'all. Let me get the bishops in here real quick. Let me get the gang in here real quick. Let me get my peoples in here so we can really get this on and popping. Because, man, this is a good chapter. Great chapter, phenomenal chapter. Peak out of 10 is a great description of this chapter. Dear Lord. I hope a lot of people go back and reread the series. Even if they don't do it, you know, like this week or something like that. I just kind of hope that when we get to maybe the next break week or something like that, we have people kind of take a time to sit down and reread the series and just kind of get a grasp on and look for some of the more subtle ways that this was kind of played with throughout the entire series. Because, man, this is a conversation that I've always seen coming, and I'm kind of disappointed that it shocked people, because I don't know, with as much dialogue as I see around this series that says and people who seem to talk like they care about social issues, to then kind of completely miss all the subtle social cues written into the story, I just find it kind of just disappointing, you know, like, but at the same time, we get to be here and we get to have that conversation. So, and Alves, Bleach's subtlety is definitely underappreciated, because there was stuff that gets covered in the 1,000-Year Blood War that was set up from very early on in the series. Oh snap, we got Squid and Tarnishing here. Also, Archbishop East may not end up stopping through because as far as I know, he's had like a splintering migraine for like the past couple days. So if he needs the day off, then that's just gonna be the case. What's up, Tarnish?
Yeah, that's perfectly respectable. But listen, man, if the world
Squid, I'm gonna need you to chill on this stream because you've been on Shoji head these past few days. You've been on his head. You've been on his head top.
Don't get me demonetized.
Been on his head top. Yeah. Yo, I peeped the Dunkin' coffee. That's a guarantee. But yo,
bro, I was trying not to do product placement. I've been purposely aiming it.
Listen, I drink it every day before work. I know what that cup look like.
That's crazy.
Yo, Aniki, they did it. He did it, bro. He made Coda raw. What the fuck is going on?
No. That is a conditional raw. Let me explain something, okay? If he don't stab somebody with that horn, okay, he goes back to mid immediately. Okay, we ain't doing this.
Yo,
okay?
This is a W. This is a W for Coda either way because we got the flashback through Coda. So Coda is a W this chapter, unironically.
Like, look, here's my thing: is that if you remember, the main thing that I flamed Coda for is having what's like a good power with the physiology that should make him strong and just not putting in the work.
Not at all.
That's just
crazy how a man who literally looks like he built like a rock is the softest student in class 1A. That's crazy.
Yo, his real name is Anima too. But yo, he trying to make him raw. He trying to do it.
Bro, look at him like trying to do. Bro, that's wild.
He still look a little soft in that picture, but like you know that picture of that dude with that dog, and it's like he's trying so hard to make that motherfucker look menacing.
So, guys, we gotta.
If you know that image, you know.
So, guys, we gotta answer the ultimate question here, okay? An overhaul. When Dobby called Spinner a lizard, was that microaggression?
Yes.
Yo, listen. That aside,
like
when Soto called homeboy a mutt, was that racism?
Yes, it was.
Definitely.
It was, okay.
So if Shoji was in that room when he said that to that mutt, would he have put hands on him?
If you're a real one, 100%. If he's a real one, of course. But hey, there's a reason why there was no obvious. Wait, is Ida heteromorph? Because he has a mutation for his engines, right? Or is he one of those dudes that like pass easily?
They retract, honestly. But his calves are ridiculous though. But
no. Oh wait, no. Ida is a mutant.
But look,
but he like passes really easily. So I guess he
a rich boy. He a rich boy too, though.
He a rich boy and he passes. That's wild.
Also, real quick, let me hit up this super chat from Joseph Shola, one of our long-term members who got a new couch recently.
My guy.
Hey, look, he said pretend to be happy, and I'm like, no, you got to understand.
The couch is happy. The couch look comfy as fuck.
Exactly, that couch look comfy as hell, and you know what? And you know how look, if you ever look at a couch and think that look comfy, you know what your second thought is?
Trying to sleep on that shit.
Okay, your third thought as an adult who pays bills.
How much is it gonna cost though? Hey, this is why Ciolo is a better man than me. Okay, I see that. I'm just nabbing that right off the bat. I ain't paying for it. That's why Joseph is the better man. Okay.
But yeah, Joseph stated, I'm looking forward to the full series reread once it's finished. The way everything flows is exciting to see from the beginning. I agree. Like, I'm going to be doing my full reread sitting here. And I've been trying to decide if I want to do. So this is something that, especially as the series is coming to an end, if you guys want more content for post end of series. So I've been thinking about doing a full reread and a retrospective, but I kind of want to wait until the series is over to do that full reread and retrospective. And I've also considered going through and just doing individual arc reviews with that retrospective in mind, instead of just doing like a full series retrospective. But I'm not sure which one is like the better approach, just because I don't want every single one of those videos to be like 50 minutes long. But at the same time, if I can do that for you guys, we'll see, especially because, you know, you got baby girl coming, but.
I mean, yeah, facts. I mean, honestly, a 50-minute solid retrospective doesn't sound like too outlandish to me. Like, it depends on like how many arcs you do in the video, to be honest. Or if it's just one, you know, maybe. Yeah. You're not doing 50 minutes on final exam, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, definitely not.
Yeah,
I appreciate the $2 all the same.
I think 50 minutes would be all right for a video. Like, you know,
so you know how we know
instead of one long ass video, you know what I'm saying?
It was, whoo, see?
That's crazy.
And that's why I was like, automatically I knew that couch on the low end was going to be like $400. And the fact that it was less than $980, like I was like, yeah, that makes sense. But that couch gonna last you as long as your dog don't tear it up. That couch will last you like a decade or more.
Yo, I actually like have an idea of where that flashback takes place though. So first of all, Deku has like a garbage bag. So it looks like it could have been after Deku versus Kachan too. And he's also wearing like a similar shirt to when he had back then. And Bakugo and Shoto aren't there either, I don't think. So
yeah, we don't see them at all.
They were probably doing their remedial course stuff at that time as well. So this probably takes place like at the beginning of Act 2, like after Camino, basically, like around that period.
Which makes sense because at the end of the day, if you're gonna live with people, you don't want to be wearing a mask around the house at all times. And like obviously Hori drew him with his mask more when we were seeing him, but I think that had more to do with not spoiling all that, you know, like this plot point that early. And I feel like this is gonna be a crazy ass episode if Bones does it justice, which
They already kind of can't though, bro.
That's the issue.
They fumbled Spinner's part of it.
Which I think they're going to have to do a CRC flashback at some point now. Now they're going to have to include that scene. Because from what I understand, Spinner's VA recorded the lines for it anyway.
Yeah, so like they definitely cut it out. Like they have it.
Mm-hmm. Hey, thank you, Thomas. I appreciate you coming through to at least stop by and wish us well. And
also, bro, Spinner got 3 quirks. Like I was thinking to myself, like for these past few weeks, like, all right, like I know he has more quirks, but why is he bugging out? Like, why is he acting?
Yeah.
Normally,
yeah,
like with 2 quirks, we have Nagant. Like she was still functional with 2 quirks. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, it can't just be 2, but like, you know, what does he have? Like he got 3 quirks, y'all. He got Gecko, Body Bulk, and Scale Mail. That's crazy.
Yeah. And see, and I was kind of wondering the same thing because if you noticed earlier in the stream, I was like, you know, he seems to be kind of surprisingly dumb for.
I was low-key kind of scared that like Hori was gonna make him soft, only getting clapped by only 2 quirks. That's crazy, but no. He knew what he was doing. 3 quirks, and my man is still kind of functional.
Surprisingly,
kinda,
to not be a normal,
a little bit.
You don't got no modifications. You just have 3 quirks straight up.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, man.
So he basically got attack power, durability, and he can stick to walls.
That's crazy.
And a big ass.
He basically like Lizard, like from Spider-Man.
Big ass sword too. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I think he give Maki a hands right now.
Hey, yo, that's crazy.
I don't think Spinner will win. No, but I think he could give Maki a hands. Like.
Give him hands and not instantly die.
Yo, yeah. I don't think the mutants are really gonna lose this conflict right now. Like, I'm assuming they're gonna get Kurogiri for things like really to progress. So like maybe the general army will turn on him somehow, like and just give up. But then Spinner's like, who's stopping Spinner right now?
Mm-hmm.
Like Shoji did damage on him before he put the armor on. So I'll give him that. Like he could damage his normal form with Octoblow.
That's crazy.
Man, look, I'm waiting for Shoji to pull out some hero gear because I feel like he's got something. Because he, the way he handled like the insulation on his arms, and when he had Momo make that for him, so there could be something extra up in here.
I'm glad you brought it up. I was just thinking about that. Like one line from that conflict that hits like harder now. It's when he told Deku, like, "You think we just that need coddling?" And now we know, like, Deku knew about all of this, like from that flashback. So it's like it even makes him look a little worse in that situation. Like, bro, you're doing too much.
He did. Also, bro, he really tried to white savior that. That's crazy.
I've definitely okay. So I even saw somebody mention how they wanted, because I'm looking at the chat right now. I saw somebody mention how they wanted Shoji's backstory earlier. They're like, we should have got more build up with Shoji, and I'm like, first off, anytime somebody makes a remark to Shoji, he says, "I'm used to people being scared of me." So I need to know what that means to y'all, because
there are some niggas in anime who just wear like a mask just to wear a mask. But most of the time, if somebody like wears a mask all the time, like
and then they say some shit like,
there's like some Naruto like Swing-kun backstory to it. That's all I know. Like I've been predicting that. That's crazy.
It's just so crazy to me how he got like violated after saving a girl and like for touching her though. Like, so I was supposed to let her drown? That's real.
I mean, like, listen, man.
That was an ultimate case of damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Listen. He was either he was either gonna be blamed. Listen,
I bet you if he didn't save her, they'd have been on some. Oh, you pushed her in the river.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They just wanted an excuse, and that's the thing is that's why like the respectability politics thing that he mentioned earlier is so interesting, because when people argue about it. So there's an old lesson from a dead English teacher of mine about how the world is filled with three types of people: shoulds, coulds, and ares. Ares tend to make the least progress like for the world or life because they just accept things the way they are. They don't think about changing things. They don't think about how things can be. They just swallow things and go about their day. Shoulds tend to be regressive, ultimately. They have a lot of ideas, but they ultimately have no functional point to them, because all they care about is how they think things should be, and they don't think about the why things are the way they are or the paths that you can take. A lot of people who are completely 100% against respectability are shoulds. They're not going to make any progress. And if you think about like how certain stuff is discussed online, you'll be like, oh, got it. These are people who are shoulds. They don't actually think about anything, how it actually is, why those things function that way. They just ultimately are only thinking about what they want and how it would benefit them, while passing it off usually as something that'll benefit everybody.
There's a lack of like scale to like how they think of like how to overall achieve their goals.
Or what matters. It's like when you see people discuss colorism and how over like 60% of the posts are about dating for some reason instead of prison sentences and, medical issues. It's like dating, prison, dating. And it's like, you're not focused on the right stuff at all. Like you're just worried about making your dating life easier is what you're actually caring about, not
rather than actually improving material conditions in like critical areas of infrastructure.
Right. And then you got people who are coulds, and coulds focus on this is what society could do, this is why it does what it does, and this is what we need to do to change that, while also making sure that these people don't necessarily interpret it the wrong way. Shoji is sitting in the could camp here. He's focused on an understanding of the fact that he should not have to worry about discrimination, but he also understands what makes people afraid. And because he understands what makes people afraid, he's taken an approach to give them and understand, like lower their guard, establish a precedent to then get them to look and feel differently about the world around them, trying to take the steps. The should route is always people should just change how they think, feel, and that should just be the end of it. And the could route is about like, well, that's just not how the human brain is wired, and you need to accept that, and then you need to work within the framework that is what goes on with the brain and the experience. Hey, we're at 69 viewers. Nice.
Nice.
Right. And so, like you said, mistakes shouldn't take away your humanity. So Shoji, having lived on both sides of this now, has a better perspective than people who could never get out of things. And that doesn't make them wrong for not having these opportunities. They're not a bad person because they didn't have the opportunity to get these, better in life. That doesn't make you a bad person, because life is about opportunity. And part of opportunity is who you meet and who's willing to elevate you. And that's that. So if you never meet somebody with access that can recommend you to a better job or anything like that, you're kind of screwed. Like, I'm gonna be real. You can go to college and get a 4.0 and do all these things correctly, but if you don't meet the right people, you're still screwed. And it's sadly just that simple.
Real.
Half of higher education, legitimately, like after like the undergraduate level, if the biggest thing that's gonna decide your positioning is who you were getting on internships. Like that's how, like that's just a fact, even like higher academia.
Like, there are people with better education than me, making less money than me, because they just don't know anybody who can get them a job. And I'm not like super rich, or I'm not even close to rich. Understand that. Yep. And history being written by the victors is one of the most important things to always keep in mind too. But like that idea that you have to know people too. And it's sad.
Yeah, I wonder how Shoji got in the UA low key, because he did, since we're saying he lived on both sides. He went from the countryside, the racist, and then he came to the big city with UA, and then now he lives. Moving to UA was probably like a big decision for him, low key. Like, even though he didn't really have a choice after all the attacks, but
so one of the things that and that's the fascinating thing, right, Thomas? The divine right to rule, manifest destiny, mandate of heaven, whatever you want to call it, because that's ultimately what All for One believes in. Manifest destiny, the divine, the mandate of heaven. This is what they believe. The mandate of heaven is specifically the term for China. Manifest destiny is what they called it in the US. But it's like this idea
imperial
that
expansion.
Yeah, it's like, we wouldn't be able to do this. We wouldn't be able to expand, to conquer, to rule, to have this power if it was not our God-given right. Now, I don't think that that's correct. I don't think people, because, just happening to be born into the right family can set you on quite a fantastic path. Elon Musk owns Twitter because at the end of the day, he was born into one of the richest families in apartheid South Africa. That's the longest short of it. He probably wouldn't even bother to do all this if he had started off somewhere normal and had to work up his way like a normal person. So,
and his dad is dating his stepsister.
That too, that weird, very weird.
Raised her since she was 4 too. That was even crazier.
Yeah, there's a lot of levels to the creepiness in that one.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even know where to start. Like, that's all I can really say is there's lots of levels to the creepiness on that one.
You know what's bad when Elon Musk is calling you a demon? That's crazy.
Like, so, and also the principal technically isn't a heteromorph. He's an animal who has a quirk.
Yeah,
so,
there's a difference.
What I find extra fascinating about that aspect is that the principal runs UA and does all this stuff as a show of good faith, also partially, more than likely got paid a certain degree of form of reparations.
Like a block of cheese.
Man, which I'm still waiting to see, because I can't fathom a world in which Nezu was experimented on and Ujiko had nothing to do with that.
He did.
I just can't believe it, especially with the mice theory and the way he's built. Like he seems to be like a larger mouse or rodent character, and I'm pretty sure Nezu even means rat. So,
The principal.
Hey, a rat being named a rat is crazy when you think about it. That's like a bar.
Well, I don't think Nezu's quirk was made. I think Nezu is kind of functions similarly to like the bubonic plague, or some of those where like rats carry pathogens, or rodents or different animals can sometimes carry diseases that don't impact them directly, but when they bump into a human or bite one, that human gets 360 no scoped out of existence.
Are you low key trying to plug your quirks or a disease theory right now?
Oh no, that's not where I was going with that one. Moreover, I was saying that in this case, the factor that would have made rats, like in Nezu's case, he would have been a rat that adapted to actually be affected by the quirks and then developed it himself, and which led to him having one himself. And in order for the brain to properly utilize quirks and all of that stuff, the brain needed to accelerate. So the real question is like, is there anything that Nezu can interact with, or does Nezu even have hope of having a partner? Because then you would have the beginning of an era where, talking animals effectively, and more than likely it would advance and spread to other species. And then, in another 200 years, you would have MHA, the world of humans, anthropomorphs, and talking animals. And as Alves said, but now that you mention it, Tarnish, do check out that video. Yeah, Ujiko naming him Nezu. Oh yeah, that's a good point. I can't believe you done this. Speaking in the chat saying, I could definitely see Ujiko naming him Nezu. He named a Nomu woman after all.
Hey. For all we know,
that's crazy when you think about it, though. That's crazy.
Listen, y'all gotta stop doing that. You know what else he did? He named Hood.
So, I mean, it could just be that simple, staring us in the face.
He named a baby John.
John.
Bro.
Bro, that man, that don't even look. That man looks like a top. Is that a toddler?
Also, I stand by John Chand and Mocha being babies or toddler.
They have to be. They literally
that were nomufied.
Like, look how small he is.
Like, there's no way. Like,
there are some babies that have quirks from when they're born.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
That was the first quirk baby.
Wait, what if that's like his second grandchild?
I mean, the Wings Nomu was apparently his nephew, so.
Smoked on that box. That's crazy. It's crazy.
Hori could just be having it stare us in the face. That's why I really, really do have a fascination with whether or not Nezu turns out to be some kind of like sleeper agent that gets activated. Like
so with this chapter,
it's so raw, bro. Imagine
so with this chapter, we have to ask the
turned over.
So with this chapter, we have to ask the ultimate question: is Natsuo Todoroki in a relationship with a heteromorph, partly because of fetishization? We got to answer that question. What are we thinking?
I think so.
Yeah, realistically, like I wouldn't even be surprised if it was partially because like the fact that Shoto was like, you mutt. I feel like even if the like family doesn't outwardly like hate mutants, I feel like there's probably been conversation about how they don't, want to be with mutants. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like
keeping it, keeping it with other respectable people. Exactly. Yeah.
And so from that perspective, you could also look at Natsuo dating a mutant as another act of rebellion.
That's crazy. Yo, that's wild when you really think about it.
Like, dude is laying next to her, like, my dad would hate this. It's so hot. Like that Don't go down that rabbit hole, Tobufu.
No, wait, what is he saying?
Quote, man, I can't imagine how OnlyFans would work in MHA.
Bro, you know Mount Lady would have like $2 million a week off of that. That's crazy.
What if John Chan was the stem cell research that Ujiko did in experimenting to use stem cells for AFO? I mean, it could be that they're lab babies, test tube babies. I just think that more than likely. Oh, so something else dark I just thought about is that a lot of ways, I just thought about the fact that if John Chan and Mocha are babies, because I've always thought about that. But what I didn't think about was that they both look like they started as mutants, because like Mocha has like the cat ears. And like maybe John Chan wasn't like that, but do you think that they were babies dashed against the rocks? Like babies rejected for being heteromorphs at birth?
You know, that'd be an interesting thought. I don't
Because like
I think maybe if they had like a mutation that kind of made them pass, but like any obvious like heteromorph looking like babies, no.
That's what I'm thinking. Like if the baby was born outright heteromorphic in one of these areas, would they keep it?
I mean, Shoji's parents kept him.
So that just means that they're tolerant. It doesn't mean that all of them do that, though.
Possibly.
This is a really dark rabbit hole to be going down. I don't know. Let's take a different direction real quick.
Listen, man, medical fields and racism go together like peanut butter and jelly. Same as prisons, same as like the hair industry, same as really any industry. Pretty much.
Typeset.
Yeah. Hey Seth, how you doing?
Yeah, right. With lurking.
Oh, well, yo, good morning.
Yo, did y'all mention League of Legends?
Look,
that's how you know Shigaraki is evil. He was playing on solo mode. I would never got
solo. Look, solo queue isn't for evil people. It's for people who wanted to play rank. Okay, no, you gotta understand. In rank queue for like the first 3 to 4 seasons, you only have the option to play solo or duo, and you have teams of 5. So in any game, at least 2 people, one on each side, were having to play solo.
League raises the homicide rate in whatever country it's being played in.
And then Flex Queue was introduced, which allowed for you to queue up with teams of like 3, 4, or 5 for like regular solo rank, and then they got rid of rank 5s. But I will say that the most toxic thing you could encounter in League of Legends, though, was not a solo queue player. It was not a duo queue player. It was the era of Flex Queue, where people could queue up as a group of 4, because they would queue up as a group of 4, and then you're just stuck. Like you could get stuck with 4 people, and if they decide they want to blame you for every single thing bad that happens in the game, that's just what you're gonna get stuck with. And then if they felt like they could even mass report you, which they eventually made it where like group reports got reduced point values and stuff like that, but whatever.
Yeah, I felt like Shiggy played solo because off one didn't want him raging on people on the game.
So fun fact, Tunisia, I actually like the lanyard that I use to this day is from when here it is. This lanyard is from when I went to see the League of Legends World Tournament in season 6, I want to say. So yeah, I'm not surprised. That was a quarterfinals in Chicago that I went to.
So you're saying that Horikoshi like put this in the manga because he found your channel and saw you started like playing that game?
I mean, maybe. Shiggy supports Riot Games. He's beyond saving. Look,
bro, they were stealing breast milk in their facilities, dog. That don't even make sense.
There was a lot that happened at Riot, which is crazy because
steals, bro?
Because they felt really transparent. So if you guys remember, I was talking about how like you used to go on the forums all the time, like general discussion would be popping. Their game devs and stuff would show up and just kind of talk to people regularly. Like people would ask questions about different characters and stuff like that. And that's part of why I always find it funny when I see people talk about game balance now, just because of how transparent they were and how they handled a lot of game balancing back in the day and what they were going for, certain philosophies. It's like for example, like I play Monster Hunter a lot now. And for Monster Hunter, the meta is build so that you can do as much damage as possible. In League, that's not how the meta works exactly. If you go full glass cannon in League, a lot of people will look at you funny. Because even if you're playing a carry role, because you getting instantly blown up makes you worthless. That extra little bit of defense can lead to you life stealing and living through an entire team fight that you would have died in if you didn't have a singular defensive option built into your build. So it's kind of crazy. Look, man, I'm gonna say it like this because everybody like the who steals breast milk comments.
Cambodian.
I was scrolling down TikTok once. And I randomly ran into a TikTok where like the audio was off, so I had to turn it back on. But then it was like, show me you have mommy milkers without showing me you have them. And she squirted the camera. Like there's a market for everything.
That's crazy.
Everything.
That's like reason 57 why we need capitalism to just get canceled. Really.
Yeah, but like, yo, wait, hold on. Back to My Hero though, because I also want to talk about this. I feel like this is a good topic. So like, how do we feel about it? Like, basically being confirmed that there's dead ass like no racism in the big cities. Like, there's really like, it kind of reminds me of Hawks' flashback a little bit, where he was like, yo, there was no heroes in my area. Like, you know, that was like I only saw them on TV. Like, heroes are really only in cities. Like, these are not superheroes who really like just travel the world and do good.
No.
Like, really only in dedicated areas.
And that's what's funny is that if you think about it, we had multiple things to build up on that idea. The whole reason why All for One was in the Crawler's neighborhood was because it had lower hero presence. Like, it was a small town. There wasn't a bunch of money to be made there, so they didn't actually spend a bunch of time there. You look at Vigilantes talks about that. If you think back to what Hawk said, where I was out in the sticks, heroes were more fantasy than reality out there. And hell, his dad was a heteromorph and spent all his went and lived out in the sticks and didn't get bothered. His dad only got caught because he went into the city. Think about that. His dad was only caught because he left the sticks.
Yo, same thing
with a car too. That was crazy.
Same thing with these civilians beating on kids. They can't do that in those streets with heroes around. They gonna get folded by somebody.
Like, you get caught beating a child in the major city and they gonna come get you. And even that like reflects real life to a certain degree, because if you end up out in a small town and you smack your kid up and they go to school one day smacked up, there's a chance people are just going to be like, oh, that's the Johnson family. That's their family business. We don't get involved with that.
Yeah, like now.
Whereas you get smacked up and end up at a school in a public school in a city, unless that school is heavily overcrowded, there's a good chance CPS is going to start asking you some questions. I know, because I've been in the position of having my back covered in welts because some kids were bragging about how they got whooped, and we were talking about it, and I was like, oh yeah, I got like welts in the shape of a Dragon Ball Z symbol right here, and I showed it to a kid, and
wait,
they
like
must
a
have been
circle
lined
with
up
the star in it.
It wasn't quite that bad. It was just like a straight up Z across my back. But which being like I was like 6'7" when that happened.
Nah.
Maybe not even that far. I think I was 5 when that happened. Hold on.
Yeah, 5-year-olds should not be talking about that in school though.
Well, people was bragging about how they got whooped, so I was like, I get whooped too. But what I learned then though was that very clearly, not everybody was getting whooped. Like I was getting whooped, because otherwise that wouldn't have scared a kid, and they wouldn't have went to tell nobody. And then that's when I was threatened to be murdered, put in a plastic bag, and dropped in the well in the Mississippi, and reported as a runaway. But that's life. So, I
just imagine like the swing set from Naruto during that whole time. It was crazy.
Shoto was from a private academy, so which you also have that where if a school is like a pay to get into, sometimes they won't talk about it like that either because we're not going to mess up our money.
Yeah, it's crazy. I feel like Bakugo would have been a racist back in his middle school days. He'd have been like, I
think he would have been like a casual racist because he'd have been like points out like features of people.
No, like Bakugo calls Jack a bug. He's the one who called
he called Mina raccoon eyes.
Exactly, like
that's crazy.
Like, this isn't
like he called Tokoyami the king, the goat, like bird beak or like bird brain, something like that.
Yeah, some bird brain comment.
Yeah, like bird brain, bird face,
spoonbill or something.
Yep.
The little wow.
Like low key, Bakugo like emanates just like that, just like casual like racism when you really think about it though.
You don't play that with Shoji, so Shoji put hands on him.
I mean, I don't want to see Shoji
if he's a
fight
real
Bakugo
one. If he's a real one.
I don't feel like that's in the well for Shoji. But
yo, bro, I don't know what it is, bro, about these.
I would have respected the attempt.
Yo, bro, not fact. Yo, Shoji just feels like such a real nigga to me now. Like, it's gonna be so weird, like, reading interactions with Shoji and other characters. Like, nigga holding so much pain behind him. Like,
Bakugo, okay, so Bakugo is the embodiment of it's just a joke, unironically, but there's still consequences, my guy. Like, that's the easiest way to explain it. The only person who's ever been actually mean to and like meant that shit was Deku. And even then, part of that was like him trying to almost service as a reality check. Like, nigga, you will die. Shut up. Like, and that's not me saying Bakugo is justified in that. Obviously, no.
Nah, I don't
condone bullying.
I don't think he had that in mind.
He kind of explained, like when he said like he doesn't take himself into account and always tries to do stuff like that or whatever. It kind of feels like he understood that, but he didn't have the right words for it, which makes sense because he was a kid, like.
I mean, with the way his mom raised him, if you really think about
that too.
I mean, if they want to, deep dive into Bakugo, like that's a fact.
Like Bakugo's mom straight up slapped him in the head for no reason. When he got mad, slapped him again for getting mad, which, man, I don't know about you, but I've definitely got my ass beat for being mad before. So
he shivers when he's around her too.
Like
during that exchange, like he's like it's weird. He you don't see him like that with anyone else, but he does shiver a bit when his mom's around because she beats him.
Listen, I'm different.
A badass kid like that. Let me stop.
Mm-hmm. That's crazy. When you really think about it, that was me. That house would be gone. I would have ripped out them gauntlets.
Yo, bro,
no more house. It's that simple. That's crazy.
Yo, bro, Bakugo was in kindergarten talking about some I'm better than everybody. I know he went home and disrespected the shit out of his dad all the time. Cause his dad's bitch made. He's bitch made.
Entirely. Disgustingly so.
Listen, okay? You know that phrase, he got the dog in him. All I see when you look into his chest, Masaru got like a little puppy.
I was saying
that puppy is sleeping. That's crazy.
He's bitch made. Yo, bro, bought Bakugo an Endeavor toy one time. Like, I know that conversation was wicked.
Also,
about that question around the manga, I think we started talking about like why discrimination is like basically gone in the cities.
Yeah.
Yeah, like on one hand, I feel like that's basically how you're doing a B plot, right? Like the manga isn't literally all about this issue, so it's like how do you bring it up or how do you justify why it wasn't brought up sooner? That's kind of what I think of when I think of like, okay, yeah, so this is what Horikoshi is doing. He wants to bring this up, but he doesn't want to like make it seem like society is literally rife with this because he hasn't really spotlighted it before. So um for me, it's fine for a B plot. Like, obviously, if this was going to be more focused on, I would rather it not be written this way. But because this is, I mean, Shoji is a side character who I like, but this is side character stuff. So in that regard, I think this is fine, honestly. And the fact that Coda is benefiting off this too is just a bonus, like kind of insane. So yeah, just on that point, like I think this is fine for like side content, basically. And it's interesting to me too that Spinner's role in this, like we've known that he's always been a follower, and I like that this is kind of how it leads up to where, like, yeah, you have this big important issue, but Spinner's like, nah, I'm just out here for my League of Legends guy. Like my League of Legends friend is in trouble, and it's like I need to help him. And so like I don't know, I like what I mean to say is that, like, this is a technical side issue for the main plot, and it's just interesting to me that Spinner is, despite how important he's an important pawn, I guess, and I think he's a villain in need of saving, possibly. We'll see, though.
So I want to build off what you just said here, Seth, because I think in the same way that the Toto family drama, while it's a bit more delved into, the Toto family drama is an interesting one because you have some people who are mad that the husband-wife DV aspect isn't explored as much as the children abuse aspect. And so that, all I can really say is there's so much more media and content that censors on like DV between partners and having like that raw look at it in comparison to DV or like violence between parent and child. And usually when they do it that way, it's resolved super easily, or they just kill off the parent so that they don't have to do the ugly work. So to that I say, maybe accept the fact that it's about the kids and their relationship with the dad more than it's about the husband and the wife.
They still, they sent Ray away too. You know what I'm saying? They didn't kill her. She got sent to the hospital.
And so we can have them talk later. But I also want to real quick hit this super chat up because we kind of talked too much or talked past the timer. So I want to make sure that it doesn't get neglected. Dead Kush coming through saying, no wonder everyone's calling around Bakugo. They got dirt on him for years to come. Objective fact.
I think okay, so my thoughts
hold
about
up,
city.
Hold up. I want to address something that Daniel said. Bakugo did do things incorrectly, but we're at a point in the story where Bakugo is more emotionally mature than his mother. And I don't think people fully realize that. So while I don't think it forgives the stuff that he's done, it does put into context just how much, because I've always said to people, it's fascinating how, on one hand, I think if somebody completely tries to absolve Bakugo, they're misguided. On the other hand, when people try to, like what I've seen a lot of people do is be like, well, you must not have a Black parent. You must not have a Caribbean parent. You must not be in an Asian family if you find Mitsuki's parenting toxic. And to that I say, sorry, it's still toxic. And by sorry, it's still toxic, I mean, I'm not sorry, it's still toxic, and you might need to unpack that. And by you might need to unpack that, I mean, go work on your shit. So
that ass.
And here's why I say that, because you cannot have a character say the violent ways in which I lashed out are a reflection of how I was raised directly, because Shoto challenged him on this when he talked about it in Remedial Course Arc, and he goes, that's how I was raised. You cannot have a character say that and then completely absolve their parent for drilling those lessons into them. I get it. You like the horny Mitsuki art. That's what it really comes down to for a good chunk of people.
That's a
they
fact.
think she's hot. Same reason why people get like so angry about Star dying. They didn't actually, people who never really cared if the number one hero from America came, suddenly cared a bunch that Cassie died.
And she did imperialism. When
in reality, if Cassie had been a dude,
like she was originally
people would have just walked right past that. They would have been like, well, that dude died.
She was originally supposed to be a guy, by the way. Like in those little volume drafts from back in the day during Deku Black, like there was drafts of Cassie being a male. Like, so they definitely, I swear to God, if some random
she made the right decision.
If some random dude just showed up and got bodied, he would have been a Brit Bozo, I swear to God.
Yeah, they would have been like, that's what he get for being a hotshot and running in. Because ultimately, the same criticism that AFO leveled at Deku about how he's quick to anger or being hot-headed or moving quickly and how he was seeking to exploit that is the same issue and behavioral pattern that was displayed with Star. She rushed in headlong and didn't fully worry about the consequences and got intercepted. Just is what it is. So exactly, there we go. I can't believe he does. Bakugo was on the hook for the things that he has said and he has done. But to ignore the conditioning, because this also kind of ties into giving more sympathy. Like, I get why people want to sympathize with villains more, but it is a little weird how much leeway and uwification we give to, like Dabi, who was in a toxic environment, but could have chosen to go any way other direction with it. Whose mom, even if she was similar to Bakugo's dad, a little too soft about the situation, tried to give him other avenues to explore, and he refused to take them. So Mitsuki does not get portrayed way too toxic. She doesn't get portrayed as toxic enough within the fandom. I'm sorry. People are way too gentle on her. Way too gentle. People will be like, Mitsuki was looking at a baby book, so that means there's nothing toxic about her. Mitsuki was talking about how Bakugo doesn't like the rain. How can anybody ever think that she's toxic? Like, my guy, understand this. Your parents being willing to look at your baby book. Your parents finally being willing to tell you they love you when you're an adult that they couldn't say when you were a child is not them being absolved of that. And it doesn't mean they aren't toxic. In fact, it usually means they're still in a lot of ways toxic. And it's just that because they owe you less as an adult or as a more successful being, and they have to parent you less, they want to be buddy-buddy and be friends with you. If you haven't lived these dynamics, it's a lot harder to like parse through, but nah, I'm telling you straight up, like when parents do stuff like this, it's a form of manipulation, whether they mean to be doing it or not.
They mean to be doing it.
I get it. Me too. Listen, Mitsuki is a very conventionally attractive person, okay? For example, I can admit Martha Stewart is a very attractive person. On the other hand, she still committed tax evasion. You could still admit someone has a good appearance without, like forgetting the actual actions they did. And just keep that thought in the back of your minds, okay?
And Cameron Bailey, we probably see some of the same tweets. And I'm going to tell you right now, I've never seen Mitsuki get called abusive without somebody immediately putting on a cape to defend her.
Mm-hmm. But they really just desperate. That's it.
Like, to clarify this further, when I said you don't live in a Caribbean household, you don't live in an Asian household, those are comments that I actually saw within the past 3 weeks.
You don't live in a non-affluent white household. Basically, that's it. That's what they say. That's crazy.
So I get it if you're like, oh, I feel like people are hard on it. But the reality is that most people are taking it easy on her. And you can say, like, oh, and that's why I said either it's she's hot or people don't want to unpack the fact that maybe their parents were a little too harsh to them.
I think there's a point to. Oh, I think there's a point to where you can tell if someone's being strict out of love. Like maybe, like as a kid, you know, always like sometimes some things you think you have to reflect on to really understand. I haven't seen enough of the Bakugo household to really play into it for sure. Bakugo has made comments that are like, "Yeah, I was raised that way." Obviously, he turned out the way he did. So yeah, I don't blame people for thinking those conclusions too. But at the same time, as for Bakugo, like parents don't always get to, the children are, well, obviously difficult in a handful, and Bakugo is no exception. So I don't want to go too hard on Mitsuki to avoid like taking culpability off Bakugo, you know. So
my stance on it is that not critiquing Mitsuki is removing any culpability of parenting, and that's not good.
Oh yeah. No, of course not. No, I mean, obviously, like it has to be a mix of both, you know, nature, like Bakugo's nature, and also, you know, nurture, like how he was raised. So I think it's a bit of, obviously they both have issues, in my opinion.
And that's like the simplest thing. It's like if you see two parents and you see a child whose behavior is pretty much the exact same as their parent, to pretend they did not get this from their parent is absurd. And if you can acknowledge that Bakugo's a bully and abusive, and then watch his mom treat him the same way he treats other people, it is not logical to then say, but she is not a bully or abusive.
Yeah.
Like, it's just not logical. You can't, so if you don't hold Bakugo as a bully or abusive, then it makes sense to say that about Mitsuki. But if you see him that way, you can't just absolve her, like let her off the hook. That's just how it works. You don't let the source off the hook for what happens downstream.
No, of course.
Like that's just how it works. And I think that people don't. What I mostly think it comes down to is people just aren't comfortable with that topic for real. And since when it comes to like the Bakugo family, it's a little easier. You can kind of just like, since it didn't get as much narrative focus, kind of just shove it to the side and take it easier.
It's also played for like slapstick, like literally. So.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Anyway,
Shigaraki gets disturbingly uwu-fied, like disturbing levels of uwu-fication.
Listen. I love that nigga, but that nigga is a monster. From the beginning, that nigga is crazy. He will kill you for little to no reason if you just piss him off.
Nah, I don't trust anyone with actual
Dang,
attraction
Orca
to
got
some of these
taken out of the
villains.
top 10 because of racism. That's a fact. I knew it. I've been saying that. Think about it.
Also, I legitimately consider Bakugo's dad to be as culpable as Mitsuki because he could work as a better mediator. He could stand up to her. He could actually, talk more and do more. And he just doesn't.
He's like, yes, honey, yes, honey, yes, ass nigga. Like,
listen, bro, he needs to watch a look. No, I ain't saying no. That's crazy.
I'm impressed by people who can lust for Da because that man is stinky, like canonically. There's no getting around it.
He smells. He's a corpse. He looks like Frankenstein.
Yo, I love that nigga too. I ain't gonna hold you, but I've never like gotten the people who have like called him attractive. I'm like, yo, like, you know, like the burns on his face, there's just no making it work for me. Like, I'm just like, you know what I'm saying? Like, if it was real, my nigga, that shit would look terrible.
Especially now, sure. Like with the current stuff in the manga, but you'll still see people like, oh, and it's like, what is wrong with you? It's like necrophilia. Come on.
Necrophilia. You already gave that man for dead.
It's the hair. It's the hair, bro. It's the hair.
I mean, everybody with that haircut has a bunch of stands. Think about it. Who has that haircut in MHA and doesn't have a bunch of stands besides like Bakugo's dad?
There's a lot of people with that haircut. Even the second he got masked. It's a nice cut.
All right.
I like
there was an interesting thing in the chapter that I thought about. Well, actually, I think you guys may have already talked about it. I came like
go ahead, Seth. Don't
how
worry
many
about
minutes
that.
after.
Don't worry about that. We want to hear your thoughts.
I don't
That's why
know.
you invited.
Yeah, well, like there was an interesting thing that I thought of while listening to you guys, and it's like, okay, so when Shoji is getting beat and whatever, and they're talking about the blood cleansing or something, I forget what it was called, but like that reminded me of Overhaul and his thoughts. Like people used to think, and I guess still do, think that quirks are like a disease, right? And so I'm like, oh, so they're treating them like lepers, and it's like, ooh, I mean that's nasty, but it's like, oh, I think that's kind of the parallel they're going with. Obviously, still discriminatory because you can just look at a person and just be, evil to them, I guess. But like, it's just interesting seeing that blend of ideas and world building. How it's like, yeah, people thought this was a disease spread by rats, and so if you touch someone, you get beat, basically. Like, just yikes all around, really. But I just thought that was interesting how those two parts of the stories technically connect. Thought that's fascinating.
It is extreme version of how people in the countries are always like thinking like they're always later than people. What we think as they're not that they're more conservative than people in the cities. It's just that concept on extreme measures. That's what I'm thinking right now. So yeah, the fact that people, because when we talk about racism, I have the same thing here in Belgium. When you go to cities, you see more people of color being from elsewhere. You have literally some places where you have a whole culture there, like in Brussels. But when you go to outside of the city, what you see is mostly white people, and you won't hear. I've lived in Flanders. You will see all the eyes. I remember the first time that I came to Flanders, when I went to live to Flanders, the first time, how really people were looking at us, and even the fact that even getting a home there was difficult because my mom is light skinned, my father is black, and the thing about it is that everybody in my family, I'm the one with the dark skin, and the other ones are all light skins. So when I was like a child, my parents were switching from home. We went to a place in Flanders, and the woman said, "Yeah, I would love to have you here, but they say to my parents, like me and my father, they don't accept me and my father, but my mother and my sister will, because they were light skinned and we were black, dark skins." So yeah, man, and things like this can really happen. It can really happen. I'm talking you about like I was 6, like 20 years ago already. 20 years ago. So just in this manga, it is just like showed in extreme. Imagine now you have people that spells different arms, weird mouths. So yeah, right now I'm talking to someone, so I have to mute myself.
Yeah, that's all right, Ponzo. I'm just glad you were able to stop by for a bit.
Yes, Ponzo. Hello, my boy.
Take care. Gosh, that's horrible.
All right. Yeah. Oh no. You get all kinds of stuff like that in families. It's weird. That's why I always say that I don't like the way stuff is discussed, because the way a lot of those kinds of discussions are handled online are very all or nothing. And then so you can have families where it basically can turn into like a numbers game. Like if everybody's dark and then a couple people are light, then those light people catch hell. If everybody's light and only a couple people are dark, they catch hell. There's this if you're different, you can catch hell. And that hierarchy system applies to families, towns, cities, villages, states, countries, etc. That's why, if you remember last week, we talked about with Thomas, the handling of Irish immigrants as they came over to the US and how they were discriminated against and then pointed to aim that anger at Black people. It's like you purposely create these dynamics so that you have a lot of internal fighting so that you can maintain power in the status quo. That's why this is so dangerous, the situation that they're in, and why Shoji is saying that, because ultimately this particular battle genuinely can set them back when all those people who live out in the boonies, and you see that like with like any march, no march is good enough for a lot of people. If people don't burn anything down, but they happen to be instead doing their protest on the freeway, then everybody's mad at them because, well, you were on the freeway and you had your march on the freeway, so we couldn't do, my commute got rerouted. So now I'm mad that you inconvenienced my day, when instead they need to like look at why people are marching in the first place. The same thing actually happened when King would march in town. Some Black folks actually weren't happy to have the civil rights marches in their town because they just wanted to be left alone. So there's all these intersecting issues and fallouts that come from both sides and events kind of happening. And it's very tragic, actually, because if people would just be honest about circumstances and acknowledge that nobody deserves a poorer existence just because they were born a certain way, we could get a lot further in society. And when we acknowledge that if you're born a certain way or in a certain location, it limits your options and your access to mobility, we'll get even further as a society. Nepotism is one of the most fascinating things in the world, because on one hand, it's terrible. It's the idea that, like, you know, somebody doesn't have to be qualified and then they somehow end up in this ridiculous, powerful position because of it. But on the other hand, nepotism is also something as small as you recommending somebody hire your friend because your friend is down on his luck. Now, when you think of nepotist, I'm sure you think of, you know, somebody getting to become like a COO or chief financial officer, like I mentioned at the last corporation that I worked for, where the dude's wife was the chief financial officer. You don't think about, well, I work at McDonald's and my buddy needs a job, so I'm going to put in a good word for him and he's hopefully going to get hired because we're short-staffed anyway. But both of them technically count as nepotism. It's just that one is considerably less toxic, harmful to society, and unfair than the other, because ultimately the person's going to get trained up, they're going to become worthy of it. But if you put somebody in that really high position and they have power over people and they can make people catch hell for stuff that they don't need to be catching hell for, that's a lot bigger problem. So there's a lot of these things exist on scales, and you just have to understand that there's an ebb and a flow and a time and a place for all things. That's also why when people say professionalism is inherently racist, I can't really agree with that. Every form of professionalism is racist. Like hairstyles restrictions, racist. Telling you not to call the client a bitch nigga, not racist. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's always a categorization of time and place. And I think a lot of people are losing sight of that these days. But with this case of the mutant uprising, and that's why it's so important to see how many of these mutants were rejected from shelters. Because if all these people were rejected from shelters, society needs to answer for that.
It had to have been a majority, bro, because
like on some level, society does have to recognize, oh, a giant terrorist attack happened, and then we told these people to stay in there and be at danger and at risk of being harmed by these terrorists further.
Yeah, they had no choice but to join up with them, bro. So
like,
what else are they supposed to do?
Like, why should I be on your side when you left me to die? And I kid you not, I had an argument with this guy on Reddit where I just kept asking him, like, you're not engaging with the important question of why. You're like, well, Shigaraki's going to destroy everything. And I'm like, even if Shigaraki's going to destroy everything, why should they want the society that treated them like shit? Couldn't answer that question, refused to answer that question. Or his answer was always like, well, I mean, you know, it's better than Shigaraki destroying all the other stuff. And it's like, is it better than him destroying the stuff that made their life hell? Like, and he couldn't conceptualize the idea that maybe, just maybe, we shouldn't be going back to the status quo.
That's in the cities now too, like discrimination out in the open at shelters, like telling.
Listen, man, discrimination like that. Listen, discrimination like that don't come up just like randomly. Okay, it was always like internalized. All it took is some. Listen, one thing that you'll learn if you study history a lot, when economic like inequality goes up, when there's like a major disaster and like a country gets destabilized, hate crimes always go up because that initial discrimination wasn't really addressed. It's just suppressed and internalized and just manifesting in more subtle, less, not harmful, but less like visually destructive ways. However, when that civility gets thrown out the window, you get to see it in all its savagery. That's just one thing you should learn.
Yeah, when things get destabilized, people stop looking people get more selfish generally, and that
they just get less. They just stop with the formalities.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like, I just mean like when things get tough, like you start looking out for your own basically, and so you start othering people both just as a defense mechanism, but also a lot of it, I guess, is defense mechanisms. A lot of issues with society are wires getting crossed. Like, for example, with the nepotism discussion we were having earlier, like, I mean, it's natural to want to look out for your friends and family. Like, that's just a thing. But you can obviously take that too far, and they can obviously get up in positions they should not be, and that's obviously bad for society. And broadly speaking, like, you want people who are qualified to do the right work and such and get the right compensation, as opposed to oh, I'm just here because my friend and I'm getting this huge payout because I'm friends with this guy or whatever. So but yeah, like yeah, that's sort of what we're seeing with that is literally what happened with MHA society. It's like, okay, yeah, discrimination or discrimination and stuff was something that especially on the level that Shoji experienced, was not at all present in the cities. But once everything goes to hell, like, now you start looking at people as like, okay, can this person physically hurt me? And it's like, you look at, the size differences and those strange appendages or whatever. And it's like, yeah, no, we don't want you. And it's horrible. It's horrible. But it also goes to show just like what the effects of, violence can do to society, how everything has been made worse from the rampant destruction. And when everyone is fighting to survive, you're going to get this kind of harsh reality. And that's why I kind of applaud Shoji for trying to build up as opposed to tear down here, because when you have people leading the pack that are positive examples for other people to emulate and for to gain respect from people who are different, like, that's the stuff that will inspire actual change. I think of even like in our own history, like, I look at our civil rights leaders, I look at people who who are different races, colors than I am. Like, there are some amazing things people can achieve regardless of what you look like. And so that kind of stuff is what really affects people's perceptions of why discrimination is wrong, why you should let people move forward based off of their natural abilities and who they are, as opposed to what they look like. So yeah, that's just some of my thoughts of the chapter, mixed in with some reality stuff. To me, this is still a B plot, like I said, but
no, it's definitely a B plot.
It's still I think it's still tastefully handled, all things considered. I'm not like I said, I'm not the biggest fan of like literally not really covering such a major issue before, but at the same time, like, I didn't get into MHA because of the discrimination subplot or whatever. Like, that's like, you're into it to see heroes like who are beaten up beyond belief somehow succeed, so but I appreciate that this is actually being tackled fairly well, considering it is a B plot, in my opinion.
To me, it's a C plot, if I'm being completely honest, because it's like this.
Yeah, the Todoroki family is more of a B plot now that I think about it.
Yeah, like, so the A plot is the journey of like Deku and One for All. The main B plot of the story is the Todoroki family. the C plot of the story, like, and obviously you can look at like Class 1A and everything else, but you can look at, to a certain degree, Class 1A's issues is the C plot. So actually here, we'll call the One for All and All for One struggle is the A plot. Like that's the A plot. The battle that's gone through generations and the characters who are tied to either the fight itself or the characters who are heavily involved in it. So B plot is the Toto family specifically, which is kind of obviously, it's clear that Horikoshi really has some feelings that he needed to talk about family specifically. And we know that his mom was important to him, but we've never heard him mention his dad. So that might be where that comes from. The C plots are basically everything else, the tertiary plots, if you will, that are designed to help, you know, flesh out and make Hero Society, you know, more concrete. And this is why I like to say the term Hero Society versus Quirk Society, because ultimately this story was meant to be focused more on the Hero Society. And I think Hori decided, I want to explore Quirk Society more. And part of how he's used, so like the C plots are here to build up the A plot. So we've heard people talk about being unhappy with the heroes, and to a certain degree, it's easy to almost feel like a lot of people are unreasonable for being unhappy with the heroes because of how much time we spent looking at the pockets of society that are so drenched and saturated in heroes. But when we look at kind of how all the areas of the sticks look like kind of like where Hawks was, or Naruhata, where the Crawler was, it's like, well, this world has these cracks in it that have been there. And so these people are coming to the forefront of the story now to express their unhappiness, to express what's left them dissatisfied with society. And this is why it makes sense for, you know, thousands upon thousands of people to be unhappy with Hero Society. One of the things I liked about Deka is that if you notice, it was about half and half, but a good chunk of the people at the Deka City incidents weren't mutants. They were people who arguably you could say might have even been jealous of some of the mutants because they can't use their quirks in daily life. But because the mutants already are, like, their quirk is just permanently active, and obviously this is them ignoring everything that comes with that and very kind of existing in a grass is always greener aspect, where if everybody's using their quirks all the time, you constantly have to also deal with the risk of them misfiring, incorrectly using them, etc. You also have to worry about people fearing you or treating you differently because of that. Even Shinso experienced quirk discrimination once people found out what his power was. Like, yeah. Oh, you can mind control people? Villain.
Honestly, if you're a mutant, you're better off joining the Liberation Army, because literally, like, if you're facing discrimination, then you can't use your quirk the way you want to. You feel wrong. Like, you're better off just being one of them. And I was thinking about that earlier. I was wondering, like, when to bring that up. Like, so this is 15,000 mutants. So, like, you got to think about how many people from the PLF escaped after the war. I know there was a hard number, but a majority of them.
They said 112.
Yeah, a majority of them got arrested. And then, you know, you got the escaped convicts. So I'm really trying to think about, like, how many of these have to be civilians? It has to be majority civilians who just said, like, fuck this shit. Like, you know what I'm saying? Because they're like trying to talk to him too, like, to, you know, get some confidence from Spinner. Like, yeah, we got to do this, right? Like, it's got to be like regular dudes who just said, like, I'm with the shits.
Yeah, no.
Sorry, it was 132.
More, like, what do you have to lose here? Yeah, like,
yeah. So not many of them could be PLF, like the mutants, and then, you know, you got the escaped convicts, which, you know, who knows how many of them are mutants.
So
and then you got civilians.
There were 16,929 people captured. 132 PLF members escaped. And so, yeah, no, this is definitely a good chunk of civilians, because you had, I think, about 10K prisoners released, but the odds of the 10K prisoners released all being PLF members doesn't really track, because they would have been in transport, getting placed somewhere. These are all people who had already been locked up for a while.
Yeah, and, you know, that's still not even how many mutants there are right now.
So definitely pulled in. If you want to be generous and say that 10,000 of this 15,000 are all former inmates, cool. Still 5,000 civilians.
At the minimum 5,000 civilians.
But we all know that the heroes were working overtime, whooping ass. Like Deku was fighting all types of people, left and right, whooping gangs and stuff. So the odds of it being 10K, escapees is pretty low.
Nah, they had to have gotten at least 1,000 escapees in this time, at least.
And some of the
We're
folks
lowballing right now hard. We're really lowballing. Like I say there's got to be at least 8,000 civilians.
And let's be real here. We saw what happened towards the end of the Star Stripe fight. Some of them broke out of jail and was like, "Cool, I'm on the land.
I'm not even involved in nothing."
Mm-hmm.
So this is a lot of civilians. Point being, like that just got rejected from shelters who are dealing with like hard discrimination, probably for the first time in their life. Some of them had no choice but to do this. But they can be swayed by somebody, possibly. Which is why I'm saying, like, I don't know how all of this is gonna ultimately end. Like, because I think Spin is gonna get Kurogiri, because I don't think anybody can stop him specifically. But this whole plot line, like, Koda is kind of squaring up on Discuss Gus. I don't really think those birds gonna do shit though, but we'll see what he's capable of. But so like, I'm really trying to think like how this is gonna ultimately end. Like, it might just be like that as like a draw, like, oh, like we convinced some people to stop fighting, but they still got Kurogiri because who was stopping Spinner? Like Mike? Come on.
Also, you realize that the giant horn coming out of Shoji's head is basically an antenna. I mean, Koda's head.
It has to be. It made a sound effect too. So I think he's really just doing that to increase his range, like, or maybe he can talk to them telepathically now or something like that.
Yeah, like he's going full Aquaman, just like, which I ain't mad at it. Give him something to do because like he's got the mask off, and we know that that's to help with range and stuff like that. So that, which I guess that means that the entire time the shape of his head was partially what allowed him to understand the animals too. But I ain't mad at it,
Like, what is Shoji about to do though? Like, we know he got like the little arm thing going on. He got the eyes, and he's trying to do something. Like, he's trying to punch him. Like, you gonna punch Spinner? Like, what is about to happen with Spinner? Honestly, is about to, cause either Spinner just like crashes out like hard, or he gets Kurogiri. Like, there's really no in between.
Because I don't see Kurogiri not getting freed unless Spinner actually manages to be taken down, which seems like a pretty tall task given what it will require to get through the plate mail.
I don't think anybody there is capable of doing that. Not even the mutants. If the mutants turn on Spinner, they just gonna have to die because I don't even think they stopping him. Yeah. He's a beast right now. He's a beast.
If I'm being honest, all it really takes is for some vehicles and stuff to start getting flung, or building pieces and stuff like that. And depending on what, as you guys coined and discussed us, has been doing and what his quirk like fully allows him to do, is really not looking too good for them. So it could quickly turn into them just kind of rolling through all this, doing a bunch of damage and getting things popping.
Some civilians might turn the tides though on some like, oh, like, we don't want to hurt kids. Like, we don't really, y'all doing just as bad as they are, or something like that. That's the most I can think of for how people survive. But like, they're gonna get Kurogiri.
Which actually, so I guess my quick question is, we all agree that next week we're staying here.
Yeah, I don't see no reason to cut away yet.
Listen, man, we still need MLK.
Still stay on this, I say.
And I think it's funny that I think some people wanted like the Deku versus Shigaraki battle to be the last battle. I didn't want that. I think we kind of talked about that a little bit, how kind of going around the horn, getting a bit more information was kind of important.
Yeah, we need to see what's going on everywhere else.
And what's more is that AFO getting his ass beat while in control, creating that stage so that AFO doesn't get to be the actual final boss, I think was a very necessary step to take. Making AFO a sub boss and allowing Shigaraki to still be the final opponent was exactly what I think we needed. Staying here until 373/374 because that'll be the end of volume 37. That makes sense to me. So I want to segue a little bit, and I want to talk about the anime just a little bit because we didn't go all the way through the chapter this week because I was kind of expecting us to get all the way to the final page, but we've been incorporating a few more flashbacks than I expected, which is part of why I think that if they are gonna, when they get to this point, we have like two options. Either they're gonna end up cutting out this stuff, which I would hate, or they're gonna have to bite that bullet, take that L, and incorporate the CRC flashback.
They can't take the L. Because if they just take the L, then this whole shit is gonna feel so more left field than it does for some people right now. Or it might just be some cool racism, like little moment in My Hero, something like that.
Because the way I'm looking at this is that, we've been getting a pretty good adaptation. Any still frames that I'm like catching in the anime lately, I feel are scenes that I'm like, yeah, okay, that's fine. Because it was supposed to be like a dramatic spread anyway. And having it in motion doesn't necessarily.
You're talking about 45% right now?
Yeah, stuff like, well, even that was partially.
I had to eat that.
But we also kind of talked about how there's so much stuff in this war that everything can't get the Sakuga treatment. It's just not feasible,
We can't get it every episode. But I will say Shigaraki's decay was beautiful.
Right, like we got a lot of sequences that
decay was way better than the one from MVA. That was what I wanted the MVA one to be.
So what I'll say this tells me is that a lot of people are like, the movies are ruining everything. And I still think that was a disingenuous criticism because a lot of what made people not want to do the main anime is how restrictive it was. This was something that animators actually talked about on Twitter here and there. I thought we were all keeping up with that kind of stuff. And then I realized we weren't. Whoops, should have done a lot more screenshotting throughout the past couple of years. But what I will say is that like sequences like Woman vs. Endeavor, as he was shooting out the Hell Spider, insanely well done.
Good filler.
I just reread, a good chunk of PLW. That wasn't necessarily there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that was filler. Yeah. Even the part with Miracle trying to get back up, that was some good characterization.
And so what this tells me is that the thing that helped the team stay on season 6 and not split into a movie and anime team isn't just that they were like, okay, well, we're not going to do a movie. It was the fact that they were allowed to be more creative this time around. They were given the permission to be more creative, and that was like, okay, cool, then I can actually have fun with these projects.
There's been a lot of filler in the anime, bro, honestly. Like, even that scene, there was a scene with Endeavor and Aizawa having some banter, like Gran Torino and them fighting last episode was filler. The whole little task force that's talking about everything, that's filler. But that's just for the audience, though, I guess. But
so there's a lot of changes this season in comparison to previous ones that make it like, actually, I'm gonna be honest, this is probably one of the least one-to-one adaptations like out the gate for a season. Obviously season 5's back, like second core is like the least one-to-one because of the restructuring, but season 6 has the most shuffling or like additions and stuff in it out of any of the seasons. Like Tokoyami being pulling up on Hawks and Dabi being moved instead of it being, in the last episode where it technically should have been story-wise. Which is why I think that, because I thought they were going to go all the way to the end of the chapter, but I think what they're trying to do is keep, especially any fights, all within the same episode. That's
I watched the preview. Next episode, the animation looks crazy. It looks like they tried a little bit.
Oh, they did that. Like they did one of my favorite panels, such justice.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about right now. That flip. Oh my God.
They did that flip properly. So I think they just kind of wanted to be able to go straight into Endeavor pulling up, doing Hell's Curtain.
Yeah,
jump.
They're probably gonna go crazy on Hell's Curtain too. Honestly, that they can use a lot of CGI there.
So it's like seeing that, how that's going to play out. And if we're keeping it a full stack, keeping it all condensed to one episode is probably for the better. Even if the cliffhanger, because they don't need to abuse cliffhangers like that this early in the season. What's more,
honestly, I've been watching some reaction videos. It's still a cliffhanger. Like, people got hype off Shigaraki just calling Maki. Like,
yeah, and that's the other thing too, is that I was like, this is still a good cliffhanger. I was like, this is still a good end to the episode, even though it wasn't what I was expecting. And it does make it where I'm trying to like place this clip, like figure out where they're going to clip this, because Encounter 2 could finish, depending on how they want to do it. They can either finish it with the eraser, you're pretty cool, or they could actually finish it with him pulling up on Deku. But I think that it might be better to finish it with Gran Torino saving them and then getting the you're pretty cool eraser head. Just because I think a lot of people would love for the closing shot to be, Eraser staring down Shigaraki. Let's see, because otherwise, especially because then you get all of the stuff with Deku pulling up and all that all in the same chapter. Because I think if we're gonna, because we titled the episode Encounter 2, so I don't think we're going past that chapter. I think the way that the chapters are the episodes are being kind of named suggests that we're naming the chapters after the ending like phase of the episode instead of just like the start or a middle point. So I gotta ask, episode, we still feeling good about the adaptation overall though so far?
It's beautiful. I love it. Yeah. When I saw that, they rearranged the Tokoyami moment, I'm like, okay, fine. But like, honestly, they handled it a lot with art direction. I feel like when they want to slow things down, it's like, okay, we're going to do a still shot, but it's going to be a really good looking one kind of thing. And then you have cool scenes like with Mountain Lady showing up during their standoff, and that's just a really neat framing, like just the black outlines of the characters. While we see that Mountain Lady is there, it made it flow really well too. Like, like the Getten moment felt like really, for dramatic effect, to be fair, in the manga, like no one was expecting Getten like at that moment. But like you see, like, okay, Mountain Lady is doing stuff here, in the background, and then suddenly, okay, now Getten needs to show up, kind of thing. It's like I don't know. I thought there was a lot of smart decisions for the anime overall, which I'm just so happy to see, especially after season 5.
I think it also allows for the next episode, assuming that we actually get this proper adaptation. I think they're trying to do it in such a way that episodes don't have to start on like a high note, and instead always there's like a bit of a building up to it, even though there's almost no way to get around it, because next episode is basically going to be starting with Tokoyami pulling up past Fat Gum, if they decide to include that, because like that scene is something that can kind of be cut, if I'm being honest, like the taking, because we know he's trying to get him help. We don't actually need to see him talk to Fat Gum and be told take him to the medics. Will they probably include it? Yes, just because it's another student-teacher interaction, but we don't need that.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine them. Well, the thing is they need every kind of break they can get, because of how just action-packed this entire arc is. So yeah, I'm not sure what they will cut. Like, they can't literally include everything, obviously, but yeah, like I'm just curious as to what could end up being cut. I'm not sure if they'll cut stuff like that. In fact, we're actually been getting additions, which is amazing.
Yeah, I'm hoping we don't cut Toga's killing spree.
No way.
Like, I don't want that cut. I think that's necessary. Getting the Makia popping out of the ground, I think that's necessary. Because then it becomes, especially because I think that this particular sequence makes a really good pre-OP sequence. Because you get that, and then Makia popping up out of the ground, and then you start the OP, and then transition back to the ruins of Jakku Hospital.
I don't think we're gonna get like Dobby collecting twice his blood. I think that's something we're gonna leave off screen just for suspenseful stuff. But like we probably will see him collect, or like the thing that was off screen from the manga, like collecting a skeptic, for example.
Yeah.
Just a roundup of all the villains. We'll probably get something like that.
So, and then the Endeavor versus Shigaraki sequence is probably going to be some of the best 2 minutes of, My Hero we've ever gotten, just because it's not that exchange isn't that long actually. And I'm pretty sure the preview actually showed the jump, so we should be in a position to have the episode be pretty good, which I guess I'm looking at it now, and they could go past. We should be able to get at least into episode chapter 276. I don't think it would be too crazy if we managed to get there. Which means we might be getting the reveal that there's the near high ends too, as a way to kind of cement where the fight is going. In fact, that would be a great end of episode, actually. I didn't originally think of it that way, but if we kind of flop a little bit of the part where Shigaraki is got the jump on you, and then we see the Nomu coming out, that could be really good actually. But yeah, I'm looking forward to what we got coming, because they're throwing some curveballs, which makes them a little harder to predict, but not in such a way that everybody gets mad about it, like with season 5.
They could add some more filler to Endeavor and Shigaraki fighting too, if they really want to.
It's one of those things where they could do it, and I wouldn't blame them if they did. I just also understand that they might not want to, just because it's just creating a lot of work for them, but I could definitely see it happening. Yep. Also, let's see. Similar reactor style gets in with Todoroki. Look at them, my guys. I'm happily afraid of how they'll handle chapter 285 moment. I'm anticipating all of MHA social media to brilliantly melt down. Hold on, let me double check 285 real quick. Oh, yeah. I kind of want the Shigaraki versus Deku round to be condensed to one episode. Maybe let him finish off with him unlocking the 7 user squirt or Nana squirt, but I need to double check and see how this fight is structured real quick.
They could honestly do 284, 285, and 286.
Yeah,
they could end with Nana showing up, putting her hand on Deku's head,
that might be it. That might be the move.
Let us do this, young one. They show him. They get the flashback. They showed, what they was doing training, little Bakugo's atonement. And then, we get the sacrifice play. And then the one for him screwing up, we get the rage moment. And then all that stuff.
The Dobby's pulling up. Because then it kind of creates this extra bit of tension where we're like, if they do another 2-3, chapters, then we get an adaptation. That episode would include them busting out of the vestige realm. It'll include Dobby basically saying that they're going to be pulling up, and it'll include the starter Ochako and Toga's fight.
Oh yes, those chapters too. So that might be better off being one episode, but it's crazy. They might rearrange that too, just like they did Tokoyami, because you know how that got split up between Shigaraki's battlefield when he got back up, and then all that happening. So they might turn that into one thing.
I'm curious how they're going to set this up, just because part of me wants The Past Never Dies to be the end of an episode, just because I think that's a really good spot to like wrap an episode up, especially because if they don't, then more than likely they'd be wrapping up with Genus. But they could wrap up with the video too, and then him diving, I guess.
I was gonna say, because The Past Never Dies also sounds like a good bridge, a good segue.
Yeah, because they could do the past never dies, you reap what you sow, and then that could be where the commercial break hits. Commercial break is, most of us.
It zooms in on Endeavor's eyes or something like that.
Yeah. And then we get the backstory when they would come back from commercial on TV. Since My Hero still factors in commercial breaks for when it's, setting up its episodes and whatnot. Let's see, Custodians.
Season 6.
But yeah, let's see. All right, I think this chapter had a lot of stuff to say that I might have opened with, so we didn't have to do as much. I might have to go back and look at that again. According to Joseph, somebody had a CRC patch that got beat up by an Endeavor in the anime.
CRC patch. Oh yeah, I remember that. I do remember that.
Oh, yeah, I saw that on Twitter. Yeah, like he was holding some. It's really hard to actually see, but someone caught the screen grab, and yeah, he has a CRC band around his arm.
Let's see if I can find it. Let's see if I can find it on Twitter, and then I'll maybe link that in the chat real quick. Let's see. All right, that wasn't what I was expecting. I typed in CRC band and I got like a Christian rock band. And I was like, I don't hate Christian rock. I just wasn't expecting that.
Yo, I have a crazy movie that involves like Tyler Perry increasing the sales of gospel music through his movies. When you really think about it.
Oh, yep. Found it. Or at least I found a post including it, but it only has 1 like, so it can't be the post you guys are talking about, which is fascinating. But I'm still going to link it anyway.
Shoji to go.
What do you rate season 6 currently out of 10?
I really can't do that right now. It's only 5 episodes.
Like, if it keeps the pace and quality that it's at, I don't think there's any reason to put it below a 9 or a 10. But it has to make sure it may, if they do something weird with the back half of the season, then shoot.
I just need the moments that are really supposed to hit the way it need to hit. Because like I said, the content carries already. Just what's happening already is just crazy. The whole situation for My Hero Academia. Especially in the anime, bro, because it's really 5 seasons of wholesomeness with a little bit of darkness at the end. And then season 6 is just a whole different ball game.
Yeah, I was on the MHA Reddit because I've been looking at it every now and then now. But one of the things that I thought was fascinating was man, I know. But I thought it was fascinating how I saw somebody mention how X-Less getting killed the way he did altered how they perceived the series, the stakes of it for them, etc. They were like, yo, I was not expecting people to die like that. And then they were like,
that was filler, bro.
And they were like, we saw 10 people die, but how many more got caught? And then I'm like, this is how you're supposed to be processing what's happening on screen. So I will say that they did a good job understanding, wait, no, people are dying out here.
Yeah, Crust dying too caught some people off guard.
Yeah, and people were kind of putting respect on Crust's name. They were like, oh, all right then, that's whew. Hey, look, even that a random post, somebody saying Crust was a real hero, MHA season 6.
The decay wave was really done justice. I think that was perfect. I think that might have elevated the manga a little bit, honestly. Like,
oh yeah, they did a wonderful job with that.
That was fantastic. No, that would be insane if MHA season 6 actually saved Reddit. Like, impossible, I know, but
Nothing good will ever come out of look, Reddit is a weird place. That's all I'm gonna say about that. Like that's all I can say about that. It's a strange place. Because I feel like people almost feel obligated to be negative there. I don't know how else to explain it. Like it's such a, but then at the same time, I'll see people like defend the most odd stuff sometimes. So I'm like, all right, it is what it is. That ain't my business. That y'all feel how y'all feel, whatever. But yeah, all right, let's start wrapping up because I feel like we're getting pretty close to the end here.
But yeah, I agree.
All right, Squid, final thoughts?
Okay, so everything. All right, so since Issa's in here, I'll go crazy instead. I've been right. I've been right. Okay, listen. I've been saying since Camino they took my man Gang Orca out the top 10 because they was racist and I knew about it. Okay, the only reason Mirko like ain't in the top like 4, before in Pro Hero was because there was some country bumpkins, okay, who did not like her because she was a heteromorph, and they were just they just trying to keep the heteromorphs down, but they keep eating. Okay, they still thriving. That's crazy. And yeah, this was a good chapter. The art was good. Coda will never be raw. Seriously, one panel of looking cool does not excuse almost 370 chapters of not rawness, of straight mid. Okay, you can't reparate that. Okay. And yeah, it's free Gang Orca, free Gigantomaki, free all the homies, and yeah, 8 out of 10. Yeah, I think that's an appropriate score.
Okay.
Also, Mount Lady had a midder privilege, and they took my man Gang Orca out because they hating on him. Hey, it's that simple. All right, I'm finished.
All right. Well, Ponzu, you came back in for final thoughts. So I guess final thoughts on the chapter.
Yes, for sure. It was an interesting chapter. Love that we talk finally about our guy Octocole. So yeah, the racist stuff, I always loved it in My Hero Academia, like the discrimination stuff, but it is really sad that it just got we didn't have more time with it, you know what I mean? I would have loved to see more development of the character, stuff like this, but yeah, it is what it is. So we'll see what the next chapter will be. It was a 7 on 10 for me, and I hope to see you soon, guys. Thank you. Bye.
All right, see you. Seth, final thoughts?
All right, so final thoughts is I really like Class A. I don't think I got to talk about it too much, but I really love the scene where they all are like trying to help Shoji have more happy memories with, his form. Just wholesome moments like that really make MHA for me. Despite being laced with a lot of heavy, dark, difficult topics, there's always like this push for the positive angle that I just really appreciate. Like, it's really easy to be nihilistic sometimes, but like Shoji finding meaning in his body by using it to help people, and his friends just coming up to him and being like, yo, bro, you can hug us all with all those limbs. Like, I'm like, oh, it's so wholesome, wonderful. Coda got to be raw. I don't care. He gets to be raw now. That's it. Shoji, I am excited to see what he'll do. He twisted his arm into some grotesque thing. I don't know how much power he actually has, how much he holds back. Usually he gets to be like the search guy because he can, make a bunch of eyes and ears and stuff, which is a really useful thing, but this guy is strong. Like I remember from the beginning when Mineta called him an octopus or something, like, yeah, he can lift, like, and then lift some more. So I'm really excited to see what kind of performance these characters will go. I have no idea what's going on with Koda's head. Just a lot of hype things for me about this chapter. Good dialogue as well. I feel bad for Spinner, but I also think this is narratively just strong for him. He has always been a follower. He has never been the idea guy. He's in the idea guy position, but he's a pawn. It reminds me of Shigaraki even, actually, a little. So I feel for him. I want to see how he ends up. All in all, just awesome chapter, and I can't wait for next week.
All right, Tarnish.
Great chapter, great chapter. I just love talking about the discrimination altogether, like, because we've all been talking about this like going on in the background, but it's never been like focused on. So to just see it being, played out is nice. Like the development for Shoji. He really does feel like that guy a little bit now. And I'm glad that like that presence was built. Like, okay, so he did go through all of that. His face design is different than it was originally supposed to be. Those scars are new from when the last time we seen it, like, because it was in a draft before, but that's a draft, so he's had more time to like expand upon what he wanted to do with him. So I do like this direction everything's going in with this plot line for now. For what it's worth, I think some of these civilians are going to see the light because there's a lot of civilians and they don't really want to do this. At the end of the day, they just got put in a really tough situation. So there is like enough for that hero aspect to still be shown, but this might also just be a villain dub because can't nobody really stop Spinner like that. But yeah, I like this chapter. I can't wait for next week.
All right. Thank everybody that came through, enjoyed this chapter this week. I'm excited to see what more we get with this plot line. Excited for my little girl too. Had to slide that in real quick, but
congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations, man. Drink plenty of water.
I got to.
Staying hydrated.
I'm actually kind of curious to see how far Koda is going to go, or like if we're gonna see him kind of pull even more creatures out, if we're gonna see the return of the Bug Man, anything like that. There's a lot of potential in this Shoji versus Spinner matchup. I kind of want to see if Shoji's got anything else in his bag, or if this is gonna kind of unfortunately end with him being defeated and struggling, hopefully living. I don't think Shoji would get killed for this, but you never know. Stories always have that aspect where things like this can get kind of rocky. And with the way things are going, I don't see Kurogiri not getting freed unless a lot of people have a change of heart. And the only way I really see that happening is if Spinner and the mindless state that he's been put into because of All for One becomes a lot more apparent to people and that he's being manipulated. But otherwise, it's looking pretty rough for the heroes. And honestly, if we keep it a full stack, even if Koda defeats Disgust Us, even if Shoji defeats Spinner, there's 15,000 people here. Somebody is breaking that line. And I don't think it's unreasonable to expect Kurogiri to eventually get free. That's just not what I see happening here. He's been one of the main villains around. And yeah, he got arrested, but I think he's almost mandatory to come back into the story. With that being said, I'm going to call it a quits here. Y'all have a wonderful day.
I'm still going to pray on Koda's downfall.
Oh, that too. But
yeah, he's still smoking that Koda pack.
But hope y'all have a wonderful week. See you next Sunday.